Terence Stamp's final curtain. A legend fades, but shadows remain. Terence Stamp, the face millions knew as General Zod, died at 87. The headlines said it was peaceful. But the silence of his London home tells a different kind of story. It began on a grey August morning. The hallway cameras blinked at 7:12, then froze. Hours later, neighbours noticed his window was dark, the curtains never drawn back. They knocked. No answer. Behind the glass, a television hummed, faint and restless like the house itself was awake. Terence Henry Stamp was born in Stepney in 1938. His father was a tugboat captain often away. The boy grew up learning quiet, listening to his own breath. Later, the world learned his face. Billy Budd, pure and angelic. General Zod, cruel and commanding. Bernadette in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, tender and brave. Chancellor Valorum, wise and weary. He lived brightly in the 60s, handsome, magnetic, his romances whispered about in songs like Terry Meets Julie. But in later years he preferred silence. He walked softly. He drank his tea alone. He left polite notes for delivery men, though the handwriting never looked quite the same. On the morning he died, his apartment was neat, too neat. A mug waited for water. A cardigan draped a chair. 3 notes sat on a desk. Thank you for the delivery. Please leave at the door. Back soon. Each slanted a different way, as if 3 versions of the same man had taken turns writing them. And then the television turned itself on. Not loud, just enough. For one heartbeat, neighbours swore they heard his voice. That deep command from decades ago. Kneel before Zod. But by then, Terence Stamp was already gone. The news told the world it was natural, expected. But his room held something unfinished. On a corkboard near his desk was a clipping about a sequel to Priscilla. Next to it, a small green checkmark. A promise, a plan, a road not yet walked. Sometimes the last act is not a crash, but a curtain lowering too soon. And yet, as tributes began to pour in from friends and co-stars, one detail made the silence feel stranger still. The world spoke his name like a prayer. Directors called him kind, funny, endlessly fascinating. A co-star from Priscilla said he was a true inspiration, in and out of heels. Friends remembered his piercing eyes, eyes that could turn a room to jelly. Even Billy Idol, the rock star of the 80s, offered thanks. Clips flooded the internet. There he was in The Limey, sharp and dangerous, in The Collector, unsettlingly calm, in Priscilla, draped in sequins, fierce and tender, and again in Superman with that one immortal line, a villain's voice that would echo forever. But between the tributes lay the overlooked whispers, the sequel he had agreed to. The quiet notes in shaky handwriting, the packages left too long at his door. The unanswered phone call that rang 4 times, then stopped. Neighbours recalled the last sound they heard. Not the news, not a movie, just a low voice from his flat, calm and steady, like someone reading lines to an empty room. Some said he was rehearsing. Others thought it was only the television. But the words carried a strange weight, as if Terence Stamp was speaking to more than just himself. The truth is simpler and stranger. He was not only an actor. He was a man who gave himself to the stage of life again and again. And when the final curtain fell, the room seemed to remember every role at once, the cardigan still on the chair, the mug still waiting for water, the check mark next to Priscilla too. And in the silence, an unfinished line, like a phone call cut too soon. Tributes lit up the world that week. But in his room, only shadows answered back. And then came the final message. Not a tape, not a video, but a row of words left by those who loved him,
carrying a soft truth into the night.
Night pressed against the London window. The city was quiet, the rain only a mist. In the room where he had spent his last hours, the lamp glowed faintly, then dimmed. The final message came not from him, but from those who remembered him best. Filmmaker Edgar Wright wrote of a man who was endlessly fascinating, kind, funny, and true. His Priscilla co-star called him brave and inspiring on screen and off. Others spoke of his eyes, his voice, his courage to embrace roles that bent and broke the rules. These tributes became the last recording. No tape, no film, just words, pressed into the world like fingerprints. The truth of the case is not a twist of violence, it is a twist of time. A man can be loved by millions, yet die quietly in a flat with only a cardigan, a mug, and a checkmark on a corkboard. And yet that quiet holds its own terror, because it asks a question that belongs not to him, but to us. Who will notice if your lamp does not turn on tomorrow? Who will knock if your curtains stay drawn? Terence Stamp's story teaches us that silence is the slowest thief. It steals the chance to share one more line, to pour one more cup of tea, to laugh one more time. They buried him with tributes and applause. But late at night, if you pass a glowing screen and hear a calm, deep voice, you might stop and listen. Not for a villain, not for a chancellor, not even for a queen.
For a man who kept saying yes to the road, right up to the end.
The screen might flicker, the sound might soften, and in that silence you might hear the last words he never spoke aloud. They buried him with tributes and applause. Directors wrote about his kindness, co-stars spoke of his courage, and fans replayed the moments where his voice shook entire theatres. But late at night, if you pass a glowing screen and hear a calm, deep voice, you might still stop and listen. Not for a villain, not for a chancellor, not even for a queen.
For a man who kept saying yes to the road, right up to the end.
The screen might flicker, the sound might soften, and in that silence you might hear the last words he never spoke aloud. Back soon. And that's where the story turns back to you. If your own light didn't switch on tomorrow, who would notice first? If you wrote a note today, would the handwriting tell your truth or a secret you've hidden? When your curtain finally falls, will the world remember applause or only silence? It's easy to think life stretches on forever, but silence has a way of stealing chances before we realize it. So check on your loved ones. Call the friend who's been quiet too long. Knock on the neighbor's door, even if it feels awkward. A simple hello can be the rope that pulls someone back from the edge of loneliness. Because life isn't a movie where villains shout for us to kneel. Life is a stage where kindness keeps the lights burning. So pour that cup of tea, share a laugh, tell a story. And remember, the scariest ghost is never the one in the shadows. It's the one we create when we forget each other.